Welcome, everybody. My name is Thor Mitchell. I'm product manager for the Google Maps APIs. Welcome to Google I/O. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We have today a bunch of the Geo API luminaries on stage here to give you a brief overview of the kind of things we're doing right now and answer questions you might have that have been festering in your brain for the last year. So let me just do a quick round of introductions. This is Ben. Ben is the tech lead manager for the Maps API.
Hey, everyone. I'm the engineering manager for the Maps API. I work in Sydney.
Use your own mic.
I'm Bart Locanthi. I'm in Mountain View. I work on the Maps Data API and also My Maps.
My name is Matt. I'm a product manager in Mountain View working on the Maps Data API team.
I'm Peter Birch, product manager for Google Earth API as well as the rest of the Google Earth family.
Hi, I'm Thatcher Ulrich. I am the tech lead of the Earth API, excuse me, and plugin.
Great. So what we thought we'd do is just take a couple of minutes each to talk about recent developments or developments in these various APIs over the last year and just kind of remind some of you where we're at. And then we'll open it up to questions. So on the subject of the Maps API, I'm not sure how many of you were in our session that we finished just 15 minutes ago. But you may not have heard that. As some of you may be aware, we have a couple of different Maps APIs. We have the V2 JavaScript Maps API, which is the most heavily used Maps API and often the one that people think of when you hear someone say Maps API. And that's been around for almost 5 years now. It's very popular, actively used on over 350,000 websites worldwide. At this time last year at Google I/O, we launched a new JavaScript Maps API, the Maps API v3, which is primarily motivated by a desire to cater better to the sort of new breed of mobile web-enabled devices like the iPhone and Android and such like. And that launched in labs at Google I/O last year, and over the course of the last year, we've been gradually adding more and more features to that API and trying to build it up to be a credible successor to the Maps API v2. So we're very happy to announce just an hour ago that the Maps API v3 is graduating from Google Code Labs today, and from here on will be the principal Google Maps JavaScript API. And you'll find that all of the Maps API-related content at this year's Google I/O is focused on the Maps API v3.
Yeah, so on the Maps Data API side, we announced the API last year at Where 2.0. And the idea behind the API, if you're not familiar with it, is that you can store geographic content on Google's cloud. So it can be kind of a pain when you want to make a maps mashup to run your own server or your own geospatial database. And so the idea is you should be able to focus on just creating like a really cool client mashup, and we'll take care of the storage and hosting and bandwidth issues for you. So this was launched last year, and then one of the things that we were pretty excited about, we launched just at the end of the year, was search. So that it's one thing to be able to just upload geographic content to the cloud and then get it back and update it, but you also often want to be able to search over it. So now you should be able to upload, say, 4,000 hotels, for example, in the United States, and then do both spatial and attribute queries on it. So you can say, give me all of the hotels within 20 miles of San Francisco, and I want only the ones that have a pool and Wi-Fi. So you can sort of decide what attributes, they're just custom attributes you can add to features, and then you can control what you get back there. And then we also added map access controls, so you can say exactly sort of who has access to your map. Do you want it to be private or public or open to the world? Share it just with specific collaborators. And you can also think of this API as basically giving you programmatic access to Google My Maps. So you can, if you want to write like a My Maps client on a mobile phone, for example, you can basically use it to create and update and retrieve Google My Maps.
So it's been a pretty exciting year for us for Earth API. This is our second anniversary of when we announced it. The last couple years, we've been spending a lot of time working on general stability, performance, platforms, getting onto more browsers and more OSs. Probably the most interesting recent development is that Google itself has become one of the largest Maps Earth API users with the introduction of our Earth view in Maps. So if you go to Google Maps right now, you actually can click on an Earth button, It brings up, an Earth view right there. You can switch back and forth between the views. You can do the things that you would normally do in Google Maps, but now immediately switch over and get an interactive, high-performance, fluid 3D view as well. That's using all of our public APIs. That's using the same plugin, same JavaScript, everything like that. That's basically the product that we built for you guys 2 years ago and have been continuing to develop. But now it's actually an integral part of one of our core properties. And I think that's a testament to sort of how we've progressed and this, how that has grown as a platform. I'm not going to talk a lot about what's coming up next because I don't want to steal Josh's thunder, who's actually back in the back there. Tomorrow, 2:15, there's going to be a talk that he and Mono, who's in the front here, are going to talk a little bit about Earth API and KML and kind of what's new. So I'm not going to tell you anything, so you should go to that talk tomorrow, 2:15. The one thing I will steal from the thunder a little bit is one of the exciting things has been just overall adoption of the plugin. I think that's always been a concern about, how many people, plugins are kind of a pain. We'd love to not have them. We'd love it if the, browsers could do great 3D all the time. That's not quite where we are right now. But we've had great adoption and penetration with Earth API, and we are now over 100 million installs of the plugin, which is a very impressive number and user base as developer if you're thinking about actually creating an Earth API application, that there's a broad base of users out there to use it. And I think that's about it.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so we have a wave. If you would like to submit questions through that, we also have a microphone. It's great for us. Google I/O is always a good opportunity for us to meet developers and understand our community. We also have a couple of other means by which you can engage with us over the course of the year outside of Google I/O, which I just want to also remind you of. It's always really helpful for us to hear from developers. All of the products on stage here and many other Google APIs have a dedicated Google group. And many of us spend time reading posts on that group, responding to posts on those groups. There are a number for the Maps API and for other APIs. So I would encourage you to take a look at those, join them. A fantastic repository of information about these APIs. We also have a issue tracker on code.google.com, which is a place where you, as a developer, can go and report any problems you're having with the API or make suggestions for features you might like to see introduced in the API. And in addition, you can see what problems or features other people have reported and essentially vote on those features by starring them. And if you do that, you'll be notified of any updates that occur on those issues. And it also helps us to understand the demand for various features. And we take that very seriously, and we do listen to that. That having been said, I was looking on our Maps API issue tracker today, and there's one feature on there that is dramatically way out in front in terms of its the demand for it. So what do you think? Any idea what that is?
They're redirections, right?
Yeah, a web service for driving directions. So it doesn't sound hard.
Well, we already have it for JavaScript, so yeah, we can probably write that tonight.
Yeah?
Okay.
Done by the end of the day?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, done by the end of the day. So there we go. If you have a similar idea that you'd like to see us implement, just pop it on there and get your friends around and have them star it, and you never know. We might just make it happen. So with that, I'll open up to questions. Yay!
I don't know if this is a question for you guys or not, but I'll give it a shot. So I work at an environmental nonprofit across the bay here, and we use a Google Maps API to display environmental data with the great background imagery and so forth that you guys provide. At one time in the past, we had our own image server and we're putting our own government imagery up and doing it all ourselves, but it's been wonderful to be able to use Google Maps API for those kind of things. And in talking to my director, we'll talk and I'll say, yeah, look at what we can do here and the different, we can have terrain, we can have the satellite imagery, so on and so forth. And he's like, wow, this is all free? Yes, this is all free. Is it always going to be free? how many eggs should we put into this basket? There's always that kind of background concern that, how many eggs should we put into the Google Maps API basket? Is there anything you guys could say that would, in my next conversation with my director, to say, don't worry, or?
So if you're worried about it being free, you're welcome to pay for it. We have a product called Google Maps API Premier. And Google Maps API Premier is essentially the existing Google Maps API, but with a bunch of other kind of considerations are wrapped around it for these sort of situations. One that's particularly pertinent here is that when you purchase Google Maps API Premier, obviously you purchase a 1 or 2 or a 3-year license, and in doing so, we commit to you that this service will continue to exist and continue to be maintained and supported for that period of time. On top of that, you get access to technical support, you get a service level agreement, you get a few additional features such as access to the API over HTTPS. Your quotas for various services such as geocoding and directions increase substantially, and you can purchase more if you need to. And we have a few more other things in the pipeline. So it sounds like you just want to pitch that product, and we'll be really happy for you to do that.
Do you have any kind of non-profit pricing at this stage?
Actually, yes. I should have mentioned that. So if you do a search on your search engine of choice for, I believe it's Google Earth Outreach and Google Maps Outreach, is that right?
Earth Outreach.
Or go help to him, yeah. So yes.
Okay, great.
And essentially you can apply for a free Premier license, basically. Oh, I should also mention that the Premier licenses also have slightly modified terms of service that allow you to do some things that you can't normally do with the Maps API, such as use it in an application that you sell for money, and use it in environments where, like intranet environments or environments where the user base is restricted in some way.
Thanks.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. I'm not sure if this is like I'll see if this is a geo team question, but do you guys plan on opening up an IP to geolocation API?
Oh, this is the ability to determine someone's location approximately based on their IP address?
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys are kind of doing a lot of that under the scenes, and like kind of similar to like a MaxMind or a QOA.
Right. So it's not part of the Maps APIs, but there is an API called the Ajax Search API, I think, has a client location object which can do this. It's not a kind of a REST service. It's just a JS-based API, but it does already exist. So if you just do a search for client location, or one word,
okay,
you'll find information about that.
I would want to call that. It's fairly coarse, though. The best you get is sort of city level, I think.
Okay. Check. All right, thanks.
So we're waiting for the next lucky questioner. I just want to encourage everyone who hasn't had a chance yet to make sure you get out to the sandbox area and check out some of the different applications being shown. There's a lot of great examples of partners who are doing great things with Maps API and Earth API and others. So if you haven't gotten a chance yet, I encourage you to definitely go out there and take a look at what people have been doing. It's really impressive.
Hi, can I have a question about pricing of Google Maps Premier Edition? Because, or how much is it approximately, and what can you use it for? Because what we did in the past was application for like watching cars moving around the world. It's paid apps, so we weren't able to use Google Maps, the free version. And as we looked to Premier Edition, it was so expensive that it's like impossible to use for a small startup just to try for a while. So we had to switch to open layers, unfortunately.
Is Dan here? No, it doesn't look like it. There are a lot of different Googlers at this conference, as you're aware, and there's many, many different people in the room. And there are a couple of people here from the Maps API Premier team, including sort of my counterpart. And the easiest thing might be for me just to connect you with him. I'm happy to do that afterwards. I don't believe the pricing has changed dramatically, is all I'll say to that right now.
So was it right that it's really so expensive that it doesn't start with some small money and grows, but it's very expensive from very beginning for paid apps?
Right. So the difficulty right now is that the way in which we manage Google Maps API Premier accounts is fairly kind of manual process. It's sort of, many of these kind of large enterprises expect a good hands-on, a good customer relationship, sort of direct access to people. And so we don't really have that middle ground right now in terms of sort of just automated purchasing, which would allow us to bring the prices down. But it's certainly something that, we're very conscious of and that we are working on.
Okay, thank you.
So this question may not be relevant to you guys either, but
You do know what session this is, right?
yeah, no, I do. So we all know the power of localization data. In particular, I'm thinking of apps like Latitude. I'd kind of like to hear how you guys plan on protecting that data, because in particular, tying location data into a telephone can, open up a whole bunch of privacy concerns. So.
Yeah, you might want to go try to find the mobile folks to specifically ask that. I mean, as a general answer, obviously privacy is a really key part of everything we do, and in terms of the, access to that information, there are multiple levels of control to make sure that, whatever information we gather is information that you're approving of, and that you can control who has access to that. In terms of, assurance and specifics about more detail, it's definitely out of my realm. So I encourage you to track down someone on the mobile team and Latitude team. I don't know if Steve Lee is here or not.
One thing I would mention is there is a session at, I think it's 3 o'clock today, that relates amongst other things to Latitude, and there will be some Latitude folks speaking at that session. So if you have particular questions around Latitude or around sort of the way that privacy is managed within Latitude, they would definitely be the right people to talk to. I think it's no surprise to anybody that it's a concern that's top of our minds and something that we're very conscious of.
Hi guys, this is definitely a question for you, but might be a bit newbie question. I'm not using I don't know about KLM or KML services, about nothing. But I'm from Finland, and I work in a non-profit organization that collects spatial data for free usage, and anyone can send us data, and we provide VMS and WVFS services for it. And we're interested in, is it possible for us to share that data also as a KML service? And if it is, what would be the best way? Does it have some sort of server software for it or something like that? By the way, they're in PostGIS database, all the data.
Yeah, so you want to come up here and get up here? Why not?
Okay.
We're just going to make this interactive here. Go right into the audience. Bono Marks, who's one of our key KML advocates.
Hi. Yeah, in general, there are a number of products that you can, open source projects that you can use that would allow you to serve things out. One that comes to mind particularly is GeoServer, which just allows you to take your data and push it out in a whole range of formats, one of which is KML. So there's a few other things like that you can use. You can talk to myself or Christian or Josh Livney, who's in the back. We can tell you a lot more about that. That's if you're wanting to do sort of live stuff. If you want to just do data conversion, there's even a broader range of things you can use.
Live stuff was the thing that we're looking for.
Yeah, so GeoServers are a really good thing. Or you can create your own service using something like OGR, which is another open source project.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of things I'll add too is that we have a Google Earth gallery that if you just have some interesting KMLs that you'd like to share with other Google Earth users, we have an Earth gallery website, and there's an interface there for you to actually upload a KML and assign it a category, and then people can star it and other people can find it and download it. And then finally also the Maps Data API, if you already kind of have data in KML, that's the format that we use to sort of upload features to the Maps Data API. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can take a KML and essentially upload it to Google's cloud, and then you'll have API access to search over it or retrieve it on different devices. We have client libraries to let you kind of access it in lots of different languages. So Maps Data API is another possibility.
What if you have websites that will generate KMLs in response to user choices, say from the census or some other government-based data or public data? In other words, I wouldn't be putting up a KML. I'd be putting up a service that it's free and open and all that.
Yeah. So from a service standpoint, you can always use a network link, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different ways
put a link up
to get information,
okay.
Right? So one is if you have your own site, you can always host your own data and make it available. You can either visualize it in situ with either Google Maps or Google Earth API. If you want to have, say, a download that is a static file but generated based on user input, you could have your own form and submit that to your server and have it produce back a static KML. And then finally, if you want to have something that's truly dynamic, you could have just a network link that refreshes. And potentially you could have different flavors of network links based on different parameters, and then users could download that, and that will continually query the server. And there's a lot of things within KML that allows you to, using regions and other triggering mechanisms to, sort of as an alternate to a WMS kind of server.
I have a very specific geeky kind of question. I do a lot in Flex, and I was wondering what is the preferred SWIC for KML parsing. I currently use Google Maps API Utility Library 426/2009.
Swift.
The reason I asked is that particular, if you go to that utility library now, it just says it's been deprecated, but I don't know where to go from there.
Is this the Google Maps Utility Library specifically for Flex, or is it that particular library in the utility library has been deprecated?
It's the API utility library for KML parsing that you had up for Flex.
Okay. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but if you come and grab me afterwards, we'll take a look and we'll figure it out.
Hi, I guess I have a similar question. It's about the Earth API utility library. So it's the JavaScript utility library for the Earth API. Is that still being worked on? It's in version 0.2 or something like that? Are there any plans to add to that or anything like that?
So that's a good question. So the question is about the Earth utility library. And a lot of that work was actually done by Roman Nurek, who was our developer advocate. He's actually now working on Android. So I think it's an open question. And I think part of it is based on feedback in terms of what would be useful to developers, right? And as we think about new API, there's always a question of, should this live within the plugin as an API, or does it make more sense for us to put a lower level API in and then include some code in the utility library? So I think that utility library is something that's always an option for us, that if we feel like, this is code that's useful but probably doesn't make sense to live within the plugin itself, then we absolutely would want to do that. I don't know if Thatcher, if you have any more. Yeah, and then Josh, who's back over here, is the guy who's probably going to write anything that if, if you have any specific suggestions or things where it's like, hey, I'm really would be able to do this one function, and it's a real, inconvenience for me, or I have a great piece of code that I think, would be great to share out with other developers, Josh is your man.
Okay, thanks.
Just want to take, sorry, I don't want to keep you standing around too long, but I just want to take a couple, one or two of the questions off of Google Wave as well while we're here. So we'll just take one right now. One of the questions I can see on there relates to the correct way to add or modify building labels on Google Maps. I think this is specifically relating to cases where the information on the base map is incorrect. Matt, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So what you'd like to do, so there's actually two questions there. One is about how to change building labels, and the example here was Case Western Reserve University, I think has some missing building labels they're saying. And the other is about sidewalks or paths being not quite right. So if you, in general, when you notice things on Google Maps in the US, there's a small link in the bottom right corner that says report a problem, and you can go there and it lets you report a problem, say about a street or an address that might be wrong, something that's missing, a label in the wrong place, and you can select a number of options and kind of move the little marker near where the problem is occurring. And our turnaround time is generally pretty good, so we're able to kind of review those and determine what needs to be fixed. And we are actively fixing things all the time. So that's the bottom right corner. You'll see a little report a problem link, and that's the recommended way to do that.
Hi, I have a question about aerial oblique imagery. I wonder what you can tell me about its appearance and growth in V3. I think it's not available in V3 now. Hoping to see it someday. I wonder what's in between aerial and are there higher priority features that I would expect to see before that? And also just the acquisition of more imagery. Anything you can tell me about that at all? Maybe nothing.
So back in January, we posted a roadmap for V3 on the Google group, and it basically laid out all the features that we plan to introduce in V3 at that point. And we've now ticked off every one of those features with the exception of aerial imagery. We basically just had to decide, we had to prioritize essentially based on what we could see the usage was in V2. That was the approach we took. So in order to be able to graduate the Maps API V3, we felt that we needed to reach a certain level of, a sufficient level of feature parity with V2 that the majority of V2 applications would be able to migrate to V3. As you probably know, aerial imagery is not being used in a lot of API sites yet for a number of reasons. Coverage is clearly one of them. Discoverability is another, and also just general awareness of the feature. To a large extent, the Maps API has relied in the past on feature awareness being driven by the Google Maps application rather than the Maps API itself. So as aerial imagery isn't currently launched on Google Maps, I think a lot of developers don't realize we have it in the API. So the decision we came to essentially was that we needed to focus on Street View first, because Street View is definitely used on many API sites. And Street View was a fairly challenging feature because in V2 and on Google Maps, it has a dependency on Flash, and the Maps API V3 is has been pitched from the start and was motivated by the desire to cater better to mobile devices, many of which don't support Flash right now. So we knew that was a big challenge and one that we needed to just crack on with, and that we would revisit aerial once that was done. We didn't think it was necessary to have aerial ready before we graduated because of the low levels of use. And we were also keen to see, it's probably no great surprise that there are discussions going on about ways of bringing aerial to Google Maps as well, and how that might be done. We want to make sure that the implementation in the API is consistent with whatever happens there. So the short answer is it's on the roadmap. We've committed to doing it in writing. It's got my name on it. I'm sworn in blood that we will do this. But I can't give you a commitment right now as to exactly when that might happen.
Did I hear in that the sort of, well, I'm not even really sure if aerial matters all that much? Yeah, it seems like, we're not really using it. People aren't consuming it.
No, you did not hear that.
Okay. Oh, fine.
No, let me expand on that. I do think it's very useful. I know that, in the places where we have it, it's certainly much, much easier to orientate yourself within that environment, particularly if you know it well when you have the aerial imagery. We just need to have a reasonably comprehensive level of coverage, and we need to have a good user experience such that users know it's there, understand how to integrate with it. Do not get disorientated by it as they switch in and out of aerial imagery, which is rotatable, compared to non-aerial imagery, which is not. So it's actually a fairly complex UI problem as well to do right. But if we can get it right, I think it will be very compelling. And I think it's also worth saying that it bridges the gap very well between the maps, the Street View, and also Earth as well.
I think for the real estate use case in particular, I find it really compelling. If I'm looking for apartments or looking for a house, being able to see the oblique is really, this kind of adds a lot to kind of get a sense of what the, okay. that's kind of how I think of it.
And if you can say anything at all about coverage, how it may expand. Maybe not.
None of the people here are really, heavily involved in the collection side of things. Coverage is clearly important, and we continue to acquire more imagery. There is a processing delay involved in getting that imagery into shape and suitable for use. But all I can say is that effort continues, and we hope to see more and more coverage. One thing that is also a bit of a problem right now is that it's not completely clear where the coverage is. And as new coverage comes online, we try and post to the group about it or something like that, but it often gets sort of lost in the noise. So we need to do a better job of discoverability generally, I think.
Thank you.
While we wait for the next question, just whoever had the question about Maps API Premier pricing, Dan Chu is now in the house. So
wave, Dan.
Raise your hand. So if you can track down Dan afterwards, he'll be happy to answer all of your Maps API Premier questions.
Okay, my question is, in V3 for maps, are we able to have all our layers, a complex KML that we exported to Google Earth, with all the polygons, lines, and see at different altitudes? Are we gonna be able to get that experience with a 2D except for the third dimension? Load, complex super overlays into maps without having to do any tweaks and just use the same KML or the network link?
So we support markers, polylines, polygons, and large numbers of markers and polygons, as well as complex polylines and polygons. The parser for KML in maps is a different parser to Google Earth's parser. There is some old KML that does not meet the KML spec that you may need to modify a little bit, but there are schema checkers that will help you find the bugs.
Okay, so I'll add a little bit to that too. So I mean, it's a known issue that what is viewable within maps from a KML standpoint is not on par with what's viewable within Earth. And that's a known issue, and we know that's a pain point for developers. Things are a little bit better now in the sense that you can have, Earth API and be able to view a full KML in that context, but that's still not a complete answer. So a lot has improved since last year in terms of what our maps-based KML parser can do in terms of what it will accept. It's taken many steps forward from before when it would not even be able to parse certain types of things, but we still have work to do. So we're continuing to work on that and trying to kind of bring that up to the level where it will be able to understand and accurately render the full set of KML.
And it's able to, if I have a network link to my super overlays on a server, it's able to respect all the conditions for when to show a layer, at which altitude, and turn off, turn on, all those things.
So again, at the moment, not everything is supported. So network links are supported. Super overlays, I believe, are sort of iffy. And again, if there's a specific question you have about some feature, you can come and talk to myself or Mono or some of the other folks over here. But there definitely will be things you can find that will not behave in the same manner, and we know about that, and we still have work to do there.
There's a pretty helpful table on one of the help sites. I'm not if you it kind of shows exactly what subset of KML is currently supported, and that's been kind of growing over time. But if you want to know exactly which features are supported or not, there's a table. I can help you find it afterward if you.
It's linked from one of the FAQs in the Maps API documentation. So if you just look for Google Maps API FAQ, and there's a FAQ in there along the lines of what features are supported for KML. As I mentioned earlier, definitely, the issue tracker is there for a reason, and we do take it seriously. So, so please do use it. On that subject, actually, there's a related question on the Wave, which is how can I make my own tile layer like the Wikipedia layer? I have the tiles, but how can I make the points on the tiles clickable?
What was the question? Sorry, can't understand your accent. So.
The question.
I'm just going to walk over here.
Yeah, you do that.
I have this technology.
Is the rest of the room not understanding me? Am I just, Okay, good.
How can I make the points on the tiles clickable?
Yeah.
How can I make my one tile layer? So if this is a question about Earth API or Maps API,
I think it relates to the Maps API. So in the Maps API v2, we have a couple of layers that overlay icons that tell you where there are related Wikipedia articles, or icons that tell you where there are related panorama photos. And those icons, you can click on them, and info windows arrive. But I was thinking that KML might be a good solution for this.
Yeah, so there's really, in general, there's two solutions. One is you have KML, in which case the content associated with the balloon is encapsulated in the data, and so when you click on it, then the info window is displayed. The other option is to use an event, click event. So if you just want to display a marker on the map, and you can get a click event and then do something based on that.
I didn't write the question, but you think maybe they're asking about kind of like and kind of when you can choose your layers, or when you can choose your tile layers. Like I think there's like a Wikipedia click to like show it or not show it. Is that what maybe that's what they're asking?
I think the core of the question is that if you have a very, very large number of points you want to render on a map, there comes a point where your browser begins to struggle, and the recommended solution to this is to render a tile set that has those points on. That works very well, except that those tiles are not, the individual points are no longer clickable because they're just imagery tiles. You know, the person who wrote this question has noticed that we return imagery tiles for the Wikipedia layers and the panorama layers, and yet somehow they're also clickable. So I think the question is how can you do that? There are a couple of things I can think of. One is the service that serves up these clickable layers is also is the same service that we use for KML rendering in v3. So if you can represent this data as a KML file rather than rendering your own tiles, then you can attach descriptions to each object, which will appear in the info windows when they're clicked. If you are worried about serving up a large KML file, then you can upload that data to the Maps Data API, and it can be served from there, very, very quickly as well.
So, for example, if you have 10,000 points, you can just render what's in the info window. But you can say, just give me back what's in this bounding box, and every time I pan my map, give me, it's very, very fast. So it'll return the new results in the bounding box, and so you can get this kind of nice query on pan effect, which is over this very large data set, but you're only having to render sort of what's in the current bounding box.
Check. Well, the question I was going to ask was in regarded to the geocoding. Can you give some insight onto kind of the roadmap for like what new countries are going to be supported and kind of what insight into kind of like how process improvement of accuracy of geocoding as it evolves? Like if I have an address, are you guys improving the existing countries?
So the geocoder essentially relies on the same data set from which we render the base map tiles. This is obviously deliberate so that everything is consistent and in sync. And we're constantly acquiring new data. And we're also constantly collecting corrections and refinements to our existing data, both from users and from other places. So coverage is obviously important to us, and we're always looking to extend our coverage for a number of different means. Sometimes we find data that we can license for a particular area that we don't have good coverage. But also we have MapMaker now, which has rolled out in a number of countries. You can probably
the total number 100-something countries. That's a lot of countries.
Yeah. MapMaker has proved very useful in countries where we don't have any existing data or very limited data sets. And there are some fascinating videos on YouTube of the way in which the maps for those regions have evolved rapidly as a result of the launch of MapMaker, which essentially allows you to actually draw roads and features and such like on the map. So, I can't comment specifically on, we expect to get more data here and here and here. But we are not done, in improving our data, and never will be.
Cool, thank you.
I'd also encourage everyone to, take an active role in, fixing things that you see are wrong. A lot of people, a lot of times you're the local experts, really. You know that your neighborhood's better than we do, and so on Google Maps, a lot of people don't realize you can actually fix problems that you see. So if you call a phone number and you find out that a place is closed or that something is, the phone number's changed, you can actually say on place page, there's a link, edit this place, and you can go in and you can update the phone number, fix a bad category. You can drag the marker if the marker seems to be in the wrong location, and or if you don't know the problem, there's a way to report a problem. So maybe you found the phone number's wrong. You're not really sure what the right phone number is. You can just essentially say, "Hey Google, this phone number is wrong," and write us a little comment, and then we'll sort of look into the details and figure out what the phone number should be. So we really would like to kind of empower our users to be the experts for their neighborhoods and help us kind of fix problems that they find.
So first of all, thank you for the work that you do. I know my livelihood is at least partially dependent on your success, so well done. Thank you. My question is in regards to the elevation service, which is awesome. Are you thinking about expanding it in any way? I have two specific applications. One, can I request elevation for an area instead of just along a line or a path? And two, something that would really benefit from the computing power that you guys have in the cloud is, given a point and an area around it, calculate a view shed. Like what can I see? Like mountains or whatever are impeding the line of sight, and maybe supplement the line of sight algorithm with an RF line of sight, for instance. That would definitely benefit me. But even just a view shed would be useful for that application. So this is just an expansion of the elevation service, I guess.
So to answer the first part of the question, what are our plans for the service? Yeah. I would say we don't have any immediate plans for kind of dramatic changes to the service. The one thing that we have been asked for that we're looking into is a way of obtaining information about the accuracy of the underlying data, or at least the, sort of the granularity, I suppose, is a better word, of the underlying data. In other words, what the base sampling distance was.
Is it DTED or SRTM data that you're using?
It varies. Okay. Yeah, it's as with many Google services, we'll license data from wherever we can and obtain data any way we can, and then we'll figure out a way to blend it all together and make it seamless. So that's something that we are looking into. In terms of sort of new features we could build on top of that, we're certainly open to ideas, and again, I suggest you put them on the issue tracker. What we tend to find a lot on the issue tracker is that we get a lot of requests for, you have feature X in API A, can we have it in API B, and such like. It would be great to have more kind of ideas that are genuinely novel. Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm one of the organizers of the new National Robotics Week in the US, and we've been trying to use Google Maps to show affiliated events across the country. For the first year, we kind of had a really hacky solution that went through like a Yahoo pipe, and it didn't work very well. So if you guys could give me any suggestions in terms of how to integrate a Google Calendar and get that onto a Google Map, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, so Google has a family of APIs called the Google Data APIs, or GData for short. So calendar, contacts, the Maps Data API is an example of one of these. So I would imagine you can kind of pull information out from calendar through the GData API and then render it using the Maps API on the map. But
it's also worth mentioning that in the last year, our primary focus in the Maps team at least has been to work on V3 and bring V3 up to scratch. But now that we've graduated, obviously we have an opportunity now to start doing some new and interesting things. And one of the things that is particularly interesting to me personally, that I think that we haven't done necessarily as good a job of in the past as I would have liked, is improving the ease with which you can integrate the Maps API with other services that Google offers. So that's something that I think we'll be taking a more active interest in trying to help people to do. Google has a lot of fantastic things to offer, and it's one of the strengths that we have, and so I'd like to see us make more of that.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi guys, our company has a number of Google Earth Pro licenses, and we have managers using these tools in order to contribute place marks and data, and we collect all those KMLs, and then we apply tool sets in Google Maps. There's two issues that I have, and they've been ongoing for about 2 to 3 years now since we purchased the Pro licenses. Number one was when we use the import function to import spreadsheets, we find that sometimes when it comes to the geocoding, the addresses aren't correctly geocoded because there's issues with the array. So it spits out a report, a little square that says, please validate these addresses. I can't copy and paste that list. I can't even save that list. I can't then save that list separately so that I can go through and manually validate it. What's the story there?
So a couple things. The question is about Earth Pro and some of the import capabilities in there. So one thing is we are working on making some improvements to the overall import capabilities of the product. In terms of the specifics of the geocoder, I would probably need to look to see, I mean, especially if you have a sample file or something,
Sure.
come talk to me afterwards. I'd love to kind of get a little bit more into the specifics of what some of those issues might be, because we're using the same geocoding service, so I don't know of exactly what error you might be running into, but
Okay.
I'd love to see what case you have and see what we can do to improve it.
No worries. And a follow-up to that was using the style template function in Google Earth Pro as well. When we save KML files and we try to open them in version 2 of Google Maps, it doesn't work. They're all sort of grouped, and I take it that there must be some sort of issue with style template. Given that our organization, and we have literally hundreds of people using these tools, that's a pretty significant issue. Can you talk about style template and compatibility between Earth and Maps?
So I don't know, but my guess would be due to the fact that the current version of Earth Pro is exporting in schema data, and that isn't understood by Maps. That problem will be addressed shortly. Okay. So there are some known issues with basically the version of KML that Earth writes out in, which is a valid version of KML, but it's an older format that isn't understood by the Maps ingester. So there's a couple ways of addressing that. One is to make sure the Maps ingester can understand all previous versions, and the other one is to write out in the most recent versions. So we're definitely working on addressing that.
So does that mean that I need to, because we're doing Maps development alongside Earth, that I need to switch to v3 of Maps in order for this, when this function is correct, or will you be changing Earth?
We're going to change Earth so that it outputs in extended data.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, two really quick questions. The first one, there was a question about the elevation. Do you guys plan to add elevation services to Google Maps, so basically height? And the second question would be, with Android and smartphones, there is all these new sensors like pressure sensors and all type of sensor. Do you plan to actually add or use this sensor for Google Maps and localization and so on?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part of the question. What type of sensor?
Pressure sensor, like altimeter.
Oh, I see. So I think the main technical restriction there is exactly which sensors are exposed to the browser or to applications running in the browser. So now there is a W3C standard, for example, for geolocation, which includes both position and sort of heading, if you like. And we've seen the geolocation side, the location-based side of that implemented fairly well now, and the headings support is coming along. So we'll add that. I think inevitably there's going to be a continued kind of expansion in the capabilities of those phones, and as that happens, the various sort of web standards will follow. And as they do, we can look into integrating them. One thing I would say though is we don't currently want to go too far down the road of sort of wrapping existing standards-based APIs in a thin Google Maps API layer. And we understand that there are, for example, let's take geolocation. We understand that there is a benefit for us, for example, for providing a geolocation class in the Maps API because you'll see it in the Maps API documentation. It'll be front and center. But on the other hand, the W3C geolocation API is very well established. It's well documented, and it works across devices. And to an extent, we want to encourage people to be familiar with these standards and build applications that rely on them. And we want to be delivering new additional value rather than just essentially putting our name on an existing service. So I would hope that those sensors become available to web applications more broadly, and as soon as they do, any existing Maps API application will be able to use them.
Okay, thank you.
I would add to that, the geolocation API, the W3C geolocation API, includes altitude. So were you able to use that?
Yeah, okay. So you are not pushing to use new sensors, so you basically wait for the phones and the services to provide it, and then, okay, understood.
Okay, yep.
So we're out of time. I think it's only fair maybe we have one more question from the floor and one more question from the wave. Can I get away with that? Okay. I'm not being told I can't, so let's do that.
Okay. So I was just looking at the Google Earth application on the Android phones that we got, and I just noticed that you can't open KML files or read that in. Are there any plans to update that to support that?
So the question is about Earth on Android, and you can't open KML files right now. So if you've actually used Earth on iPhone, that you'll notice that you can actually go into My Maps and view documents that you might have uploaded.
Using the Maps Data API.
Using the Maps Data API, actually. We're a customer of the Maps Data API. So the same engine is running on both. So you might imagine that at some point in the near future we'll be adding capability like that. So it's really just a matter of, as we've been developing for Android, we wanted to get the engine up and running and get the basic application, but I think you'll see over time across all of the mobile space that we're going to be continuing to invest in and grow the capabilities of Earth and Maps on those, because the mobile space is obviously a very critical part to us.
So to wrap up, one last question from the Wave. There's a question here which is, how can I integrate Google Maps APIs with Esri's Arcgis software? So Esri do actually publish a class for displaying overlays generated by Esri or by Arcgis on Google Maps API maps. If you do a search for Arcgis Esri Google JavaScript Maps API, you will find that they have a class that does support this and various examples as well. So I think that's all we have time for. I think most of us will be here the rest of the day and tomorrow as well. So if you see us, please feel free to come and say hi. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to help you. I don't want to squat in this room too long. I know there's another session to follow, so we'll probably move outside fairly quickly, but we'll mill around and be happy to discuss more. So thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.